Hiya, my name is Eve. I work at Arts for Health. I do art therapy there. Today we're doing an art therapy process. This process is based on the altered book idea. So we're going to be using books and we're going to be altering them. But the idea today is that we're doing a shortened version of this, so we're just going to be doing an altered page. So one page out of a book. So if you're interested, keep watching. So for our altered page, we're going to be taking one page out of a book. We're going to be altering it with collage and pastel and felt and working towards adding in ideas of peace or adding in ideas of energy. So those are some of our themes for today, and then we're going to do a little reflection and a bit of writing at the end, and then I'll show you my process as well. Okay, so a major thing about the process today is that it is based on modifying books, on altering an actual book that exists in the world that someone else has made and printed and that's been loved. Okay, so we want to acknowledge that this book, for example, if I chose to use this book, that someone has created this, it's got a whole history, it's lived as a book, and we want to say, thank you book, we're going to turn you into an artwork now. So we really want to acknowledge the value that books have in our lives. If you do feel alright turning a book into another sort of piece of art, then this process might be interesting for you today. So what materials do we need today? Of course, firstly we need a book or books, so a picture book to use. You might need some scissors and some glue for your modifications. We're going to need some felt or maybe some pastels depending on which you like, so we can do some drawings in there. And then we're going to need some paper, so we're going to put it all down and glue it on some paper. And the other thing that I have is some collage. If you don't have collage, that's fine. Collage is just images taken out of a magazine or a newspaper, so I have lots of different ones here that I might use to add into my book and into my image. So a good way to do this is to use a second-hand book. So that might be a book from an op shop, a picture book from an op shop, or it might be a book from the for sale shelf in a library. Choose a book that you feel is appropriate, that you're okay to modify heavily. So a good way to do that is to use a second-hand book that's already had a life, it's already been loved, now it's no longer needed by anyone, and you're going to give it a second life and recycle it and turn it into a new artwork. Also, if you don't feel comfortable using an actual book, you could use a magazine. If you have access to some magazines with some big clear pages with big pictures in them, that would be a really good way to do this too. So the idea today is that we're exploring story and modification, those two things. So we've got story, we've got an image or a book, maybe a storyline that we've identified, or as we're going there might be some images that create a little narrative in your mind. Okay? Then we're exploring what is it like to have power to change the story. So in all of our lives, it's very useful if we feel that we have power to change what's happening, to change the narrative. So that's one of the things that we're exploring today. Another big part of today is collage and using images that already exist, so collage images or images from the book, using them as a launch pad. So it's a different type of creativity when we have images that are already there and we're changing them and repositioning and flipping, changing what they mean to us, as opposed to creating them straight from scratch. So it's exploring a different type of sort of recycling creativity as opposed to creating from the beginning. So those are the ideas of what we're doing today. Of course, this process may mean something different to you, and that's awesome too. Okay, so what are our steps today? What's our process? The very first step is to choose a book. Once you've chosen a book, now we have to choose the page that we're going to work with. So we're looking for one page, but you could choose two if that works better for you. You're looking for a page that has maybe some writing on it, but a few images that you can work with as well. So look through the book. What you're looking for is something that stands out to you and catches your attention. So it doesn't have to be a page that you think, oh, that's super beautiful already. You might think, this is interesting, there's something here that I'd like to work with. So it might be a bit mysterious, it might make you curious about something, it might remind you of something, it might feel like it's linked to you, or it might remind you of something totally different. So just a page that stands out to you that you'd like to develop. The next thing to do once you've picked your page is to write a note or a little letter to the book. So of course you can skip this step if you think this is not appropriate for you, if you don't need this. But for some people it's quite useful to write a little thank you to the book. You could write whatever you like to the book, acknowledging its value and acknowledging that it's going to be turned into some new artwork. Or another way we can do it is write it on a piece of paper and insert it into the book. So you can do that step if you feel that's appropriate for you. So once you've written your thank you note, the next thing to do is to take the page out. So you can do this with scissors, and then you're going to look at it and notice what you would like to work on first. The next thing is to make all those modifications, put on some collage, cut things out that we would like. So then we do our modifications, then we're going to finish up by doing a little title and a reflection, and you might be able to talk or write about what you've made, do a little reflection about what it means for you. Okay, let's get started. So I've actually chosen my book already, and I've chosen the page that I'd like to use. So the first thing I'm going to do is write my thank you note. To this book, The Ship's Cat, to Alan Aldridge and Richard Adams, I'm grateful that you exist, you, this book, for this moment, for the art that I will make. I'm grateful for the people that have read your beautiful pages. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Richard. In gratitude, from Eve. So now I'm going to go and get my page, cut it out, and start my modifications. Okay, so I've cut out my pages, I've cut out my main image that I was first attracted to, and I cut out the words that were nearby as well. Feel free to do the same, or if you don't feel that words are going to be useful for you at that time, then you can leave the words. I've got mine there because I think I might decide to use them, so I've got them as an option there. I've got all my materials nearby, so I've got my collage, I've got felts and pastels, I've got my glue stick, I've got pages that I can add with. So the next thing is to take a moment to pause and reflect just for a minute before you get going about what you're going to do next. So we're not necessarily making a plan here, but we're just giving ourselves a little moment of peace before we start getting more creative. So one thing that you could focus on at this point is a theme or a line following through your image. So some options are, what can I add or modify or change in this image to move towards peace? Or what can I add and modify in this image to move towards energy? So if either of those themes sound good and useful to you, then that's the way you can go. If you would prefer to make changes to the image based on other themes or something else that's come up for you, then that is a great idea. So I'm going to take a moment Just reflect for a second, do some breathing, and then I'm going to get started. So I have finished my image and I've done my written reflection. So here's my image, my collage, my altered page. So my initial page that came out of the book was over here, and then I added lots of different things using collage and pastel and felt. So we've got a cat looking through a glass, there's a fishbowl here with a fish in it, we've got an ocean in the background made with collage, and then there's some sort of forest and land and a beach down here, and then some fish coming over towards this fish here. So some things that I noticed as I went today. The very first thing that stood out, basically the whole time, was the collage process itself, how it felt to be ripping things and moving things around, how it felt to have glue on my fingers and not to know where everything should go. So there was no perfect answer, there was lots of permission to try and move, trial and error, lots of reshuffling, and you will have seen that on the video. So that was a very nice process for me because I was able, with these images, to move things around, and that felt really good to me, that things weren't stuck down until I chose to stick them down with glue. Another thing that I noticed was that I was adding and removing. So often when we're creative, we put things in and we are allowed to take things away. But it was something that I'd noticed quite a lot because I had an image in here that I'd actually glued down, and then I was able to make the choice, I'm actually not going to have that image. So I had a boat in here with some people on it, and then I decided, as I felt more and more closer to peace, that I wanted to have less humans in my image and more about the creatures. So I was able to remove that human image, and that was okay. But it was an interesting little moment where I realized I can add things and I can make the choice to take things away too. And that's what collage can do for us. That's what altering a story is all about. What's staying in and what's coming out. Another major thing that had my attention the whole time was the story between the fish and the cat. So the cat has a very interesting searching, looking through his glass. So he's looking through his sea glass and he's looking maybe at the fish, maybe into the distance, maybe at me. I always wondered, what is he looking at and what is he wanting? And that started me off on an interesting thought about what's the relationship between these fish and the cat. It seems to me that maybe the fish are coming to save their fish friend, but maybe the cat is keeping the fish safe. Maybe the cat's looking out for something else. I really enjoyed that whole process of working out the narrative and the story about these characters, and that was very powerful because I could move these around and think as I went, as I was making it. The final thing that stood out to me was the idea of working with peace and energy. So when I first started, I didn't realize that I might have had quite raised energy, just a bit of energy as I moved lots of things around and had lots of images filling up my page. And as I worked further and further, I realized that I didn't need so many things in my page and I wanted more clarity and space. And that was good because I worked from a higher energy to a calmer energy simply by using this collage and keeping on going. So that was a really enjoyable process, and I recognized, especially as I did my written reflection, I recognized that I'd moved from high energy with a full page to slightly more clarity, and that was really good for me. So you will see I've done my written reflection as well. So I wrote down what stood out for me immediately after doing the image. I added a title. I've also got on the back of the image a little poem that came from the words in the book that I first had. So this is a poem about the fish and the cat and how they work together. So I did a reflection and a poem. So I'm just going to read one little piece. My process taught me about peace and energy. It took me from energy to peace. I learned that it is often useful to acknowledge that there is raised energy, before we move to peace. I couldn't have peace without energy. So that was my process today. Thank you for watching. I hope it's given you some ideas for your own creativity. Join us next time, and thank you.